Have you ever laid in bed next to the person you love and felt completely alone? That heavy silence where the only sound is the clock ticking, or maybe a steady breathing, while your mind replays every unspoken word. The way he dismissed your concern earlier, the joke that stung a little too much, the way you bit your tongue again, because you didn't want to start something. It's not just loneliness. It's the ache of being misunderstood in the one place you're supposed to feel safe. Maybe you've even tried to explain it before, only to hear, "You're overreacting." Or, "Why do you always make things so dramatic?" So you stop, you swallow the words, turn away, and tell yourself, "It's not that big of a deal." But here's the truth. That silence, it's building a wall between you, brick by brick. And one day you'll realize you've become strangers sharing a bed. You're not crazy. You're not too emotional. You're a woman who's been loving someone with everything you have while quietly wondering, does he even see me? Does he want to? And today, we're talking about why that silence is so dangerous. Not just for your marriage, but for you. Because every time you mute your feelings to keep the peace, you lose a little piece of yourself in the process. But it doesn't have to stay this way. Let's talk about how to break the cycle before the wall gets too high to climb. That phrase, happy wife, happy life. It sounds sweet on the surface, doesn't it? Like a husband's loving promise to prioritize your happiness. But let's peel back the layers, because what it's really saying is, your emotional state determines whether this household gets to be peaceful. That's not love. That's emotional labor disguised as a compliment. Think about it. When was the last time you felt truly allowed to not be okay? Not the performative kind of fine you paste on when guests come over, but the messy, real kind of unhappy? The kind where you might need to say, "I'm drowning in the mental load," or, "I need you to show up differently for me." Here's the hard truth. That catchy phrase has quietly turned your valid emotional needs into a job requirement. Like you're the CEO of the family's happiness, responsible for keeping everything running smoothly. Because if you're not happy, suddenly you're the problem. Not the unequal division of labor. Not the lack of emotional support. Not the way your concerns get minimized until you start questioning your own reality. But real love doesn't work like that. A healthy marriage isn't about you stuffing down your pain to maintain some illusion of harmony. It's about creating a relationship where both of you can say, "This isn't working for me," without fear of being labeled dramatic or too emotional, where your husband's goal isn't just to keep you happy like some emotional thermostat, but to truly see you, even when what you're feeling isn't convenient. So the next time you hear that phrase, I want you to hear this instead. Authentic wife, thriving life. Because your marriage doesn't need a happiness manager. It needs a real, raw, honest connection, where your voice matters just as much as your smile. Resentment in marriage doesn't announce itself with dramatic flare-ups. It seeps in quietly through countless moments when we choose silence over speaking our truth. It's the accumulation of all those times you swallowed your hurt, when you asked for help with the kids for the third time only to see him remain glued to the game, when he rolled his eyes at something important to you, or when your vulnerable sharing was met with a dismissive, "I'm sorry you feel that way," rather than genuine understanding. These aren't just minor oversights. They're emotional paper cuts that never heal, each one making the next hurt sting just a little more. What makes this dynamic so dangerous is the compounding effect of unaddressed pain. Every time you bite your tongue to keep the peace, you're not actually avoiding conflict. You're simply deferring it with interest. That issue you didn't mention last week? It's now coloring how you interpret this week's thoughtless comment. The resentment manifests in subtle but telling ways. When his harmless habits suddenly make your blood boil, when you stop sharing both the little daily details and the big emotional needs, or when you catch yourself fantasizing that he should somehow just know why you're upset. The heartbreaking irony is that your emotional withdrawal isn't meant as punishment. It's self-preservation. After repeatedly experiencing how speaking up leads to dismissal or defensiveness, silence begins to feel like the safer option. Meanwhile, your partner may remain completely unaware of the growing distance, not realizing that your quiet resignation is actually the aftermath of countless unacknowledged hurts. Breaking this cycle doesn't require explosive confrontations, but rather the courage for small, vulnerable truths. When I was sharing about my stressful day and you kept scrolling, that really hurt me. Or, hearing you call my reminders nagging makes me not want to ask for help at all. These honest moments bring the resentment out of the shadows where it's been festering. Like opening the curtains in a dark room, it allows fresh air and light into your connection, creating space for understanding to grow where resentment once took root. The path back to each other begins when we replace silent suffering with gentle but consistent truth-telling. There's a special kind of exhaustion that comes from being the one who always remembers. Not just the obvious things like when the milk runs low, but the countless invisible details that keep a household running. It's knowing which store carries the specific brand your picky toddler will actually drink, noticing when your partner hasn't called his mother in weeks, and wrestling with whether to remind him, again, and constantly mapping out the emotional and logistical needs of your entire family while your partner simply shows up for the journey. This mental load isn't just about completing tasks. It's the weight of being the default keeper of all the moving parts. The real frustration surfaces when you finally muster the courage to ask for help, only to hear those four dismissive words. Just tell me what to do. This response stings because it reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of partnership. It suggests the mental labor of identifying needs should remain solely your responsibility, as if you're the CEO delegating tasks to an employee rather than equal partners building a life together. It makes his participation conditional upon your continued management, adding yet another item to your endless to-do list. Teach my partner how to care. What we truly crave goes far beyond task completion. We long for a partner who actively notices what needs to be done. Someone who sees the empty milk carton and adds it to the grocery list without prompting, remembers his own mother's birthday without reminders, and understands that genuine care means paying attention rather than waiting for instructions. This isn't about demanding perfection, but about cultivating mutual willingness to share the full weight of domestic life, both the visible chores and the invisible mental labor. The difference between "tell me what to do" and "I'll figure this out" might seem small, but it represents a seismic shift in responsibility. One phrase puts the burden back on you, while the other demonstrates real ownership. True partnership blossoms when both people are equally invested in noticing, remembering, and caring, when household responsibilities become a shared mission rather than a series of assigned tasks. It's the difference between feeling like a household manager and feeling like part of a true team. We've all been there. That moment when he asks, "What's wrong?" And the word "fine" automatically slips out, even as your heart aches with everything you're not saying. But this simple four-letter word carries so much more weight than we realize. Each time we say "fine" when we're not just avoiding a conversation. We're reinforcing a painful pattern that's quietly chipping away at our connection. Underneath that automatic response lies a world of unspoken truths. "Fine" really means "I'm too exhausted to explain why I'm upset." Again. It translates to "I don't have the energy to defend my feelings right now." Most heartbreakingly, it says, "I've learned my vulnerability will be met with defensiveness rather than understanding." This pattern starts small. Something hurts us, we say "fine" because previous attempts to communicate went nowhere. He takes it at face value, and the unresolved issue festers. With each repetition, the next hurt cuts deeper, and "fine" becomes our default defense mechanism. What we're really grieving in these moments is profound. We mourn the loss of hope that our feelings will be received with care. We've come to painfully accept that it's easier to pretend than to risk being misunderstood. And with each unspoken truth, we witness the slow death of emotional intimacy in our marriage. Every time we say "fine," we lose opportunities for real connection, chances for our partner to truly know and love the real us, and the possibility of working through issues while they're still small and manageable. But there is another way. Not through explosive confrontation, but through brave vulnerability. It starts with small but powerful phrases like, I'm not okay, but I'm scared to tell you why, or I need some time, then I want to share what's really going on. These honest admissions act like bricks being carefully removed from the wall between you. And when met with loving understanding, they become the mortar that builds something stronger in its place. A relationship where fine no longer has to be the safest answer. The moment you realize your silence is no longer protecting your marriage, it's slowly suffocating it. That's when everything changes. This isn't about waiting for the perfect time or crafting the perfect words. It's about finding the courage to say, we can't keep doing this, when your hands are shaking and your voice wants to crack. Imagine this. You sit across from him, your stomach in knots, and instead of saying, fine, you whisper, I don't want to resent you. I want to trust you with my heart again. That single sentence, raw and real, holds more power than years of swallowed frustrations. Yes, it might feel terrifying to be that vulnerable, to risk being dismissed or misunderstood yet again. But here's the truth you need to hear. The silence you think is keeping the peace, it's actually creating a war inside you. Every unspoken hurt, every dismissed need, every time you've pretended to be okay when you weren't, those aren't acts of love. They're slow withdrawals from your emotional bank account. And one day, you'll look up and realize you're bankrupt. This turning point doesn't require grand gestures or ultimatums. It starts with small, brave choices. Choosing to speak your truth even when your voice shakes. Choosing to believe your feelings matter enough to be heard. Choosing to stop protecting him from the consequences of his emotional absence. The marriage you're trying to save by staying quiet? That version of your relationship is already slipping through your fingers like sand. But the marriage waiting on the other side of honesty, where you can say, this hurt me. And he can hear it without defensiveness. That's the marriage worth fighting for. It begins with one conversation, one moment of terrifying vulnerability, one decision to stop dying slowly in the name of keeping the peace. Because the risk of speaking up is nothing compared to the cost of staying silent. Let me tell you something you might not have heard in a long time. Your feelings are not burdens. They are the very compass that can guide your marriage back to solid ground. Every frustration, every quiet ache, every moment you've swallowed your truth. They aren't signs of failure, but signals pointing you toward what your heart truly needs. This isn't about blaming him or shaming yourself. It's about recognizing that love, real love, isn't about making yourself smaller to keep the peace. It's about creating a space where you can both show up, fully, messily, imperfectly, and still feel safe. Yes, this work is hard. It requires vulnerability when you'd rather build walls. It asks you to speak when silence has become your refuge. But here's what I want you to remember. You are already doing the most courageous part. You're here, reading these words, daring to imagine something different. That alone is proof that you haven't given up. On yourself, or on the love you deserve. And that kind of courage? It's contagious. When you start honoring your voice, you give him the chance to rise to the occasion. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not all at once. But in those small, tender moments when he really listens, when he chooses to see you, you'll realize something miraculous. The love you've been longing for wasn't lost. It was just waiting for you to stop hiding. So take a deep breath. The road ahead isn't about fixing everything overnight. It's about taking one honest step at a time. And no matter how it unfolds, please know this. You are worthy of a love that doesn't ask you to disappear. A love that feels like coming home. To yourself and to each other. If today's story touched something inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe so we can keep these honest conversations going. And if you have a story of your own, or need advice on something you're carrying in silence, drop it in the comments. I read every word, and who knows, your story might become the next video that helps someone feel a little less alone. This is Marriage Matters, and your voice matters here.